Hi, I'm Bill Sheehy from Latin American Masters in Los Angeles, California. And we're looking at a piece by the great Mexican artist Francisco Toledo, born in 1940, passed away in 2019. Let's take a second and look at the work, and then I'll talk a bit about it. Francisco Toledo was the dominant figure in Mexican art and culture over the last 40 some odd years. He worked in many different media and was famous for many different contributions he made to culture. But arguably the most significant and characteristic of Toledo's contributions was his expansion and invention of animal imagery, or an expansion of what is sometimes called the zoomorphic tradition in the visual arts. You may be familiar with Picasso's use of the bull in his work, or the use of animal imagery going as far back to all the way back actually to the beginnings of culture with cave paintings. But animals have been a part of world culture all over the world since really throughout time. And if you look at literary traditions from Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland to Aesop's fables, children's stories that bridge the human and the animal, the human and the child using animal imagery. These are all aspects of that zoomorphic tradition. And Toledo did remarkable things. I don't really think that there's any visual artist who's done more with the tradition of the zoomorphic or animal imagery than Toledo. That's just one aspect of his work, but it's extremely important. And it's obviously relevant to this piece because on one level, it's a very rich, by the way, nuanced piece, both with color and particularly with texture. When you see this piece in person, it's extremely tactile and earthy. But what you have essentially is a close-up of the head of a monkey. And the monkey is, he doesn't look like he's having his best day. He looks very anxious. And, he's isolated. Monkeys are social animals, and this monkey is all alone. And he looks very, very concerned with with his situation. His mouth is open as if he wants to shout out and scream. But if you look at it, it looks like his mouth is blocked. It looks like there's something in front of his mouth that keeps him from actually communicating. And if you look up above at his eyes, you can see that they look like they're peering out to you from, shattered eyeglasses, or if you wanted to look at it in architectural terms, broken windows. A little digression here. Francisco Toledo, one of his sources of inspiration, one of his many sources of inspiration, was the Mayan book of creation. And in that great work of literature, the Popol Vuh, monkeys represent an early attempt by the gods to make human beings. But because the monkeys cannot speak, the gods decide to turn them into the artists. So that's interesting with respect to this, because there's a way in which the monkey is also a stand-in for the artist. And that lack of speech, that blockage, has a reference both in terms of, our human world, where when you can't communicate, you feel even more isolated. And also, in terms of this idea of the lack of speech as it's associated with ancient mythology. The piece is called the Casa de Chango, the house of the monkey, and that's very interesting because what Toledo's done here, which is very original, is he's conjoined architecture with the image of the animal. And I mentioned the shattered windows up above that the eyes peer through, and down below, where you see this sort of blockage of the mouth, that can easily be read as the door, the closed door to a building. That's interesting because it suggests both that we cannot enter into it, and also, in the case of the animal, that the animal cannot express the feelings and emotions that are trapped inside. So there is this sort of wall between the outer and inner world. you get some idea from this of the complexities of Francisco Toledo's psychological imaginings. I think Toledo was, subliminally aware of the work of the great painter, printmaker from Norway, Edvard Munch. And Edvard Munch did this great painting. He actually did a couple of them entitled The Scream, where you have an isolated figure, I think on a bridge, screaming out in horror. It's a very simplified form. So this is in a sense, connected with it. But in this case, Toledo makes he takes that idea and he adds a level of entrapment to it. Imagine Munch's figure if it actually was tied up in a way that it couldn't scream. It would have a different meaning. It would even in some ways be crueler. This piece has that quality. So there's a connection there also with the history of European art. I hope you've enjoyed this brief conversation on the work of Francisco Toledo. If you'd like to see more of his work, please visit our website. Thank you very much.